Great, and we're live yet again for the final session of Caribbean Developer Week 2018. This is our Roundup / open forum where we get together as developers and discuss some of the topics of the entire event, as well as just see how we move forward from here. Let me thank everyone who spoke again, who gave sessions, as well as the people who looked at those sessions, who will give any comments in the chat room. Thank you all. We appreciate it very much. It was actually very annoying and tedious to put this together, but actually watching the sessions take place and the contributions people made and whatnot, it was really fun. So I had a lot of fun. And I know Natalie had a lot of fun as well. And thank Ariel, who is not here. Thank her for volunteering to host. I think it was 2 sessions she hosted, right? Yeah, just thanks everybody for that. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna just recap a little bit on the sessions that took place, and then we're gonna get into, as I said, well, we have some news to get from Akua, and then we're gonna move into a general kind of open table thing. See, again, people still joining in. I think we now have 10 people, and I believe that's the max for Hangouts. So anybody else trying to get in on the actual session, my apologies. I think we are now officially full. 7, 8, yeah, 10. And ironically, we actually had 10 sessions, which was interesting to me. We were actually going for like, we're trying to get 10 sessions. We were actually expecting to get like 4. Okay, again, a question here about Slack. We don't use Slack, actually. I'm not sure if you're referring to the Caribbean Tech Forum. Or you mean the Hangouts? Okay, I have no idea what's that. So, go on.
I said it's all good. We can move on.
Okay. Natalie, could you assist with that?
Oh, he's okay. Nicholas said I think it's the Hangout apps. He said no problem. Okay, so you could go ahead.
I think I just realized what's going on my end. I have a little problem on my machine. I'm running 100% CPU utilization, so that's why I'm not hearing people clearly. Okay. Yeah, could anybody just say something? I just want to check my audio again.
Test.
Oh no, brown cow.
Okay, great. So let me apologize. I was getting everybody choppy. It was because I had a rogue application just kind of taking up all my resources. Basically, TypeScript server was going crazy. Yeah. So if anybody could assist with what Louis is trying to get done there, please do. I am going to get into these sessions now. Oh, actually, I'm now starting to see this Slack app on these sites, so that's probably what he's talking about. But in any case, let me share my screen. First, make sure there's nothing I don't want the whole internet to know. Yeah, so just here on the website where we have all the sessions that took place. The first session we had, other than the introduction, was making games with Phaser 3, hosted by Marcus Nathan. Marcus works on server-side development stuff, but he's somebody who always kind of playing around with the video game stuff. So anybody here took in the Phase 3 introduction, the first session.
I've seen like
Asking us.
first half.
I watched it. You might be muted.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, so I found the Phase stuff was pretty interesting. There's a lot of talk in the region about, as Marcus mentioned, like animation as an industry. There are one or two people who, you know, have their little startups doing video game development, slash animation. What's funny to me though is a lot of time you also see them doing web development because, you know, that still kind of, I think that's still one of the most somewhat lucrative things in the Caribbean right now in terms of software. But yeah, the animation, the video game stuff, sorry, seems to really have its own kind of subculture because I know in Trinidad we have there's like a game developers trying to be a little group. It's not that big, but you know these guys seem pretty passionate about game development, right? Right. Tough crowd today, boy.
No, sorry, I couldn't unmute fast enough. I didn't get a chance to really take a look at the session. I just only kind of briefly, I think, uploaded the code to GitHub. So I only got a chance to kind of go through some of the code and stuff like that. I mean, it looks like a very interesting industry. I think the issue is around coordination. And I've seen it happen before in music. When it comes to music and the arts, music and arts and technology has always been a bit of an issue in the Caribbean, and I think that's probably the reason why we are not seeing enough gaming development being done locally here. I don't know if anybody has something different to what I just said.
I mean, in terms of gaming development being done here, I think it has a lot. I think it has a lot to do with the outsourcing culture that exists in the Caribbean. You'll always hear me referring to the fact that the talent pool that we need to develop in the Caribbean it's not maturity yet in order to go after those big contracts. There are some small studios in Jamaica, in Trinidad that I know of as well. And the fact of the matter is, even when the big jobs come, it's hard for these studios to keep up. So I mean, I think it has to do with talent to some degree.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree a little bit on the talent aspect because it's not that people aren't talented, but like as I said in that session, like growing up to me, when I started looking at you know, computers and programming, that kind of thing, making a video game was like the holy grail because there's just so much that's involved in actually producing a game of quality. Like I always mention, I think Max Payne for PlayStation, I think 2, that was like the first video game I ever purchased. That, well, no, it wasn't the first video game I purchased, but it was an important game in my life. I'm gonna put it like that. I think that game took like 5 years or more just to get done. And, it, you know, that length of time is very expensive. So we don't really have an industry that could provide you with that kind of income to keep going for a product that takes so long. Because I think Age of Empires 2 or Age of Empires 1, another popular game, I think that took nearly 10 years to complete.
Yeah, well, I've only dabbled in gaming in terms of Unity, and I think back then it was a little bit more difficult because yeah, you needed to build your own engine in C or C++. You needed, with pixelated graphics, you literally had to paint out everything. I guess screen by screen, and then by extension, then run the animations and so on. So I mean that takes time. But with all these different frameworks and gaming engines that are out here, like Unreal and Unity and by extension Phaser, it kind of cuts down on the time. But I guess at the same time, like what Mr. Walters, I think, it said it was that you know, there seems to be a lack of talent or to keep it very sustainable. So that might be an issue as well.
Well, yeah, the point I was making was actually that because it tends to be a long thing and it tends to be expensive, the talent might be there, but at the basic level, but doesn't get the opportunity to, you know, get that experience and move on to the next level.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So it does seem like it's a compounded issue.
Yeah. So that was the first session. Anybody has any other comments on that? But before I move on to the other one. Okay, silence is golden.
I have one, sorry.
Oh, okay, go on.
I'm not too familiar with all of these gaming engines. I've used Phaser like once, and it was like a very trivial purpose. Does Phaser really compare to engines like Unity and Unreal? If anybody who might know, does it support the same kind of stuff, or is Phaser just like a 2D thing?
Phaser is pointed at basically the web browser, like full HTML5 canvas stuff. Marcus, of course, will be a better person to comment on that. But the stuff like the Unreal Engine and those kind of things, I know with the WebAssembly, they have been targeting WebAssembly specifically, but Phaser actually works with like existing browser APIs. So you can make like those kind of things. I don't know if it has 3D rendering, which I doubt, but Marcus will probably comment on that at some point. But it's kind of like two different targets, but because of how the web is becoming so, you know, ubiquitous everywhere, it's the same target, just using like different parts of the target. You have WebAssembly, and you have the current set of web APIs you could use through JavaScript and whatnot. Because Phaser is JavaScript based, by the way, for those who are aware.
Good.
Okay. Moving on. The next session, of course, was, well, maybe OBK, you wanna just give us a summary of what your session consisted of?
Let's not rehash too much of it, but I was more aiming on the whole idea of quality assurance, by extension security, when it comes to development. So I picked a topic in that kind of region, which is static code analysis, user acceptance testing and different types of testing after you have put together your code. But nobody really talks about trying to be, you know, more preemptive with bugs and vulnerabilities in your code. So my session was more or less focused around the whole software development lifecycle process, as well as by extension, you know, where security and the whole idea of static code analysis lies within the process. So I don't know if anybody has any questions based on my session, if you watched it that day or after. I think it's still on YouTube.
Yeah, they're all still there.
I have a question.
Yep.
Oh, I think in your session you used a Sonar Cube, right? Was that it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. How does Sonar Cube compare to something like SNCC for JavaScript? Like, is it comparable in its functionality? Is it any better or worse? Or do you have any clue?
SNCC. I haven't. I'll be honest with you. There are a lot of static code analysis tools out there. multiple. I'm not familiar with SNCC.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All
The
right.
ones I know of is like SonarCube. Well, I'm kind of primarily a Python Java developer, so I know stuff like find bugs, find security bugs, Pylint, and there's a next one kind of escaping my mind right now. So, but yeah, those are all right. HP Fortify as well. I'm kind of familiar with that one too, but I'm not familiar with the other one. Sorry.
It's all good. In your experience, right? I mean, I'm in security as well, but I still have very limited experience with these kind of tools.
Sure.
I do a lot of more manual review, but would you say in your experience that these tools like they catch a lot of bugs during development, or
Yes
is it just like
and
a
no.
rare occasional thing that you actually find?
No, no. Well, it's kind of occasional. Reason being is because of where I work, we get things differently at times. Personally, I've used SonarCube for my own personal projects, my personal Python projects that I have decided that I haven't released as yet, but they're getting to be released eventually. But what I would say is that the good thing about the tool is that it makes the task automated. It makes it fast. It makes it quick. Right. The downside of it is that there are a lot of false positives. So spend a little bit of a fair amount of time, kind of every scan that progresses, you end up having to optimize and go through your results and eliminate these false positives and try and see what parts of your code are actual bugs versus what is false positives. And that is something that unfortunately is a downside of the tool, but it does make those manual reviews move a lot faster. I can tell you this. The only difference is that you end up with a fair amount of false positives, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I made a comment that in JavaScript land, I think they have a style checker thing called JCS something or something or the other. And I think they kind of like extended it to check not necessarily bugs, but like, code and stuff similar to the JS hint and JS and stuff. I mean, they're definitely useful, especially with those stock type languages. As I mentioned to you, sorry, because like I really see these kind of things like you have a large team, like probably working on a real large project with a lot of different developers. Like this could help catch a lot of bugs that would be like a nightmare to keep track of because you have so many people working on the code base.
Yeah, agreed. Probably for a single developer who's probably making a very small application, a manual review might be better in that instance. But if you have a very large project, something like SonarCube cuts down the amount of time on the amount of code that you have to review, especially when it's like thousands of lines of code.
Right.
I am not sure I agree with that, but that's for a different time.
Okay.
I guess at the end of the day, it depends on what level of project you have and the amount of resources you have to that project.
And I see Ainsworth is mentioning Fabric.io for mobile development.
Yeah.
Fabric.io.
Sorry, I didn't mean to chime in, but I figured I'd throw that out there. I've used Fabric.io. It works good for Android and iOS if you're doing development, especially on team. So instead of having to necessarily, you see that there's a crash, you have it running, something seems to be working okay. Fabric.io pulls the source, the line of code that is the issue, and then it'll give you a report based on it. So sometimes you know that there's a problem, but you can't tell where the problem is. You know, the automation of that actually works really well. And you know, I used before I was going through everything, and then it was, hey, let's install this in it, and it made a world of a difference in the testing and the performance.
Okay.
Great. So the next session, this one was on a Wednesday. The speaker is not here, but that was with Irwin. I actually missed the 2 sessions on Wednesday. I just kind of got like a piece of each one of them. Funky things to do with Azure functions. Now, I know, Natalie, you have an Azure account and you absolutely have been dying to use it for a long time. So maybe you could talk a little bit about this one. Oh, wait. My apologies. I forgot, Natalie. Oh, you are here. Okay. So yeah. So just tell us something briefly about the session. You don't have to go into too much detail. Just let us know what it was about, because I haven't watched it over as yet.
Okay, if you're hearing some noise in the background, I can't help that. Yeah, it just so happened to be at this particular point in time. What he touched mostly based on the function aspects of using Azure, because Azure, as if I think everybody know, they have different things we could use. So he was more showing us on how we could actually create our functions using Azure and test it. For me, I was more interested in learning more about how I can utilize it for web development or utilizing the tool itself. So it was very interesting. I think you all should listen in on it. And I think that's about it. I have to say I'm sort of in between, so I can get back to you guys on this in a while. Hello.
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry.
Okay. Oh no, well, everybody's on silent. At least one person could say, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So we all.
He actually showed you how to create your functions. But he used Visual Studios, and then from there, uploaded it onto Azure platform. For it to use, we mentioned that if you never use Azure, they actually give you $200 worth of credit for signing up for the first time users, so you can actually utilize it. He also mentioned if you was a student, students also have access to Azure. I think with the Microsoft platform, they actually have, if you're starting up your business, you could actually utilize their products. They used to be called BizPacks. I think they changed the name. So those are different things that you could utilize, use with Azure. So that's more working with a Microsoft platform.
So wait, Irwin was doing ASCII art.
No, he just focused on the functions aspect of Azure, and we just went through. At the end, we just went through the basic different things that you could use Azure to deploy.
Okay, looks pretty cool. I know Microsoft announced not too long ago they were putting up, making like some millions of dollars available in funding for startups or something like that. So it looks like they're not only trying to take over the open source world, but they're also really investing in, small, young businesses. I don't really like the startup term too much, but more or less startups. Yeah, so anybody has any comments on that? Well, do we have any C# developers here by chance, actually? Just remember your microphones are all muted. You may have to unmute it if you're trying to say something.
I haven't used Azure as yet. the most unfortunately, I ended up skipping out this session. So
Well, the good news, it's online and you could go back and replay it.
How many times you want?
yes, I know, but just one question, I guess, concerning this session, right? So the code that he was using, right? What was its purpose more or less for? The functions that he was coding and then uploaded. What did it ultimately do?
From my recollection, I watched most of it. He created a function which was able to create another function, which it uploaded the code for to Azure Blob Store, and then used that upload to set up a new function to run that code on a trigger that he scheduled every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think he had some recursion in his description, yeah, because he did kind of make his description recursive.
It was, yeah, no, I do not recall. It was actually a trigger with a watering system, like, you know, to water your lawn, and was the function where it will trigger. You can set the times you want each water function to sprinkle. So that was the function we're showing you how to do the trigger.
Oh, so you mean it's something that could have been used in like IoT, you know, that kind of realm?
Yeah. So he said he didn't actually, he just did the functionality because he didn't actually have the device to show us, but was the function of having a watering system, and you can set your times for when you want the certain things to do. So he was creating the functions and showing you how to set that sort of function, and then saving it and not having to rewrite a function again. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll take a look at that session, I guess.
Yeah, it's actually this is like a whole, you know, I don't know if you pay attention to it, but this is like a whole new platform by itself that all the major vendors are kind of bringing out, where you basically, rather than, you know, write the whole application yourself, they would have like things that you could run, kind of like, well, I know AWS Lambda is a bit more specific, but I think
you're talking about serverless computing, where you like just write code and upload it to the cloud and it just runs.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could I guess you could group it in there, but I was going to talk about, like, you know, because you mentioned the IoT, the Google Home or whatever they call it now. You know, they have a set of like conditions and rules, or like pre-designed stuff, like, you know, companies put it up and whatnot, and you could kind of like string them together to make things happen and whatnot. So.
Oh, okay. I understand what you're talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with it because unfortunately I do not own Google Home or Amazon Alexa or any one of these listening devices. But the concept itself is behind them in terms of the usefulness is really cool. All right. Yeah. So moving on to the next session. Let me just be careful here not to confuse myself as I am using two screens showing the same thing. That was funky, right? And then after that, we had Shannon, who was actually trying to get on, but I think he was getting the room is full message. So my apologies there, Shannon.
But I think he's on looking at our slides, so if he has questions, comments, he could actually put it in the comments box and we could interact with him.
Yeah, but is anybody actually monitoring the comments and all that?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you are? Okay, yeah, so, I'm seeing him there. He's saying that the voting app source is now on GitHub and working. Somebody has a handle called Really Nice Code. Interesting. But yeah, so this session, I just got a peek of it. This blockchain stuff is interesting, but honestly, you end up in a rabbit hole when you start to read about it, because I spent some time, I read like the original Bitcoin paper, and then I started looking up all the things that were going on. But it really is a rabbit hole. The more you get into it, the more there's stuff to look at, right? I'm not going to attempt to even explain the Ethereum platform. All I know is the term smart contracts that is used heavily. So people could look up Shannon Clark on Facebook. I think they have the app developers group on Facebook. There's also the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, I think the group is, but you could ask the questions in those groups and they could explain more. The only thing I could comment on this session that was the fact that the Ethereum platform has like its own language they made for, I guess, writing smart contracts. I think as Shannon explained it to me. Actually, it would be nice to have him come on and actually explain the concept of a smart contract in a real kind of low level form, because the thing I am not getting with the smart contract is like, why care basically then? Or what is the use case now that makes it that everybody wants to apply this to everything? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We actually have 9 people on, so I think you can try again, Shannon, and see if you get in.
I'm not a smart contract or blockchain expert, but basically what the smart contract lets you do is it's your ledger that is shared between the individual entities. That's kind of really the piece that is open in most cases for both sides to know what's happening when. Everyone always applies it to blockchain and money because that seems to be Bitcoin and the thing that sounds sexiest, but you can consider a smart contract for a land developer where the land developer says, I have the rights to this property and I'm going to make building X. That smart contract can be applied to all the parts that go into that building, all the materials, everybody else that works with it. And it would be something that's decentralized so that the government could see, okay, yeah, this person says he actually owns it. He actually paid the rights for it. These people worked on this project. They did the concrete. They poured it. People are doing the thing that they said they're going to do, and it's basically immutable. But that kind of is the central piece of, that ledger is the central piece behind blockchain.
Right. My thing is, I used to work in a company that did investments a while ago, and one of the things that stuck to me was the CEO said something that she basically doesn't invest if she doesn't understand. My concern with a lot of these blockchain technologies is that I know there's a lot of efforts to explain stuff, but I think it's really important that things are like explained as they say, explained so like a 3-year-old could understand. I think blockchain tech needs that, like, explain it so that somebody still inside their womb could understand, because the adoption will come when there's opportunity to make profit, but when it's more
sorry, I think Shannon is online with us right now.
Oh, he came into the channel?
Yeah, he came into the channel.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Shannon, you could take over and comment in your session.
Okay, what was the question? Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
I want an explanation on the whole blockchain and smart contracts in layman's terms, I guess.
Yeah, we got some from Ainsworth there, so you could just kind of talk about it some more and comment on your session, basically.
Okay, well, I think it's simplest to just think of the blockchain as a database that runs on multiple computers at the same time. The thing that's special about that is that not only is it immutable, in other words, you can only add information to it, you can't actually remove information. but each addition that is made has to be agreed upon by each of those computers. So you could run a blockchain, you could create your own blockchain, and run it on your own computer, or only on your own computer. And really and truly, it would be no different functionally from just another database. However, what we're doing is Ethereum and Bitcoin blockchains and all the other blockchains that we now have, as someone mentioned, a record or a ledger, that multiple companies have agreed upon. Now, in order to get this agreement, which is called consensus, there are different methods that are applied, but ultimately what needs to be done is, since you're not running the processing only on your computer, you have to pay for the processing to be done on all this network of computers. So if it's just 100 computers, that's a payment that has to go there. If it's 1 million computers, like what's happening right now, or millions of computers, and ultimately it becomes a larger network, and the cost of that processing may go up or may go down. Now, I think that's pretty simple. Any questions about that?
I just have one question, and it's a question that unfortunately I tend to ask a lot of blockchain people. Have you seen,
No.
Yeah. Have you seen blockchain being applied anywhere else other than financial successfully?
Yes, actually.
Okay. Could you give me that example?
In areas that span beyond financial. So, for instance, my brother is a geoinformatics, GIS, geoinformatics systems engineer, and they are actually running a test right now on using blockchain in order for not only the record keeping, but also for handing off the workflow between the different departments. So, how is it? Right now, right now, a lot of people think that, okay, the immutable record is a perfect analogy for accounting, because in accounting, you have not only the company's books, but also whoever the auditors are, internal auditors and external auditors, who have to refer to these books in paper or in spreadsheet, in order to find out, okay, well, what's the true status of the company's financials, banks. Now, the thing is that it doesn't matter of trust. You're trusting that nobody changes records at the time of auditing. If you have the blockchain, there's no way that anybody could change any of that, or theoretically, there's no way anybody could change any of that until at least quantum computers come around. So the value of using blockchain, because I think that was a great question that was asked before, like, okay, we can do this, but why do it? You know, we can do almost anything, but why do it? And the value there is that instead of sharing an Excel spreadsheet and then going through all the different background checks, we now have a system which theoretically is impossible to change. So anything that's been added to it in terms of the company financials and any expenses that they made, etc., is then something that anyone can review. Now, a Bitcoin blockchain and the Ethereum blockchain set a precedent where all transactions are public. That's not the case with all blockchains, but it being public then introduces another element of transparency. So then with the land records, this means that right now, issues that we have in Barbados where sometimes the same land parcel is sold to multiple people because someone had deeds from 1950, traveled overseas to England, records are probably lost, whether physical or otherwise, and then someone else wants to buy it, and you're like, okay, well, we can't find records for who has the land title, so we're just going to assume that it belongs to the state, to the crown now, so we're just going to sell it over to the person. This ultimately has led to people having conflicting land title deeds, as well as ending up paying taxes, land taxes, on land that they own, but it's not only them that own it, or land that they actually don't own. So it's in those two areas. that's one that I've seen. There are others that obviously a lot of people say blockchain could be used for anything. But I think the important thing to think about when you come to the use cases for blockchain is, well, are there multiple parties that participate in an existing network where right now the best system of trust that they have is the middleman, which is typically a lawyer or accountant and whatnot. And could that be made more efficient by having a computer provide that trust? If it can't be made more efficient by a computer, if there's actually a good reason why that middleman should be there, then there's really no reason why a blockchain should be implemented. There are other hurdles as well, but I think that's key. So you know what? I'm actually going to add another one. One that I disagree with, that a lot of people are promoting, is blockchain for healthcare records. I think that sounds good, but it's not good. Because if you have a blockchain for medical records, then you are going to have any potential misdiagnoses done by any of your doctors ultimately on your record for life. And that would then be referenced by your insurance company, be referenced by different doctors, whether it's private or public. And you yourself, as the owner of medical records, unless you are somehow able to determine who can access your medical records, you may not have access to determine, okay, who actually, well, may not have permission to determine, okay, who actually can review my medical records. How can I say that this doctor gave me this diagnosis, but in actual fact, it was just that the doctor didn't have enough education and didn't actually give me the proper diagnosis. So who becomes a verifier in that case? And in situations like that, where ultimately you can record on a blockchain, but you still have to go back to humans, I don't think it should go onto a blockchain.
Okay. Is that feedback coming from me? Okay. All right. Right.
Another question.
Sorry, I heard somebody speaking just now.
I said, oh, this is Shannon. I said I'll mute until there's another question, if there's another question.
Yeah, so any other questions on the blockchain thing, people? Ethereum specifically? Okay. Yeah, so the next session we had was microservices for sanity and savings. That's another one I only got a glimpse of. That was with Lewis. So seeing as you're here, I could let you talk about your session a little bit so people might be inclined to check it out if they didn't.
Yeah, sure. It was really just a quick overview of using the serverless framework to deploy a serverless architecture, whether that's a message queue for data processing pipeline, or really whatever your use case is. Just a quick look at using AWS Lambda, setting up the various resources you might need. And I talked a little bit about also using that in a more secure environment so that you could lock those things down into separate VPCs or whatever to control access to different parts of data.
Okay, VPCs is a term now, I guess, and that means virtual private container.
Virtual private cloud.
Oh, cloud. Oh, okay.
Essentially a subsection of your cloud account that is generally segmented off or inaccessible to the public internet so that you can have resources that are private.
Right. So you actually an educator, right?
Only in the limited free time I have. I've been volunteering with the Standard 5 class to teach them programming, but historically I've volunteered on weekends and worked during the week.
Oh, it's a volunteer thing. Okay, no problem. So In that case, then, well, I'm assuming then your background is largely then in enterprise systems and whatnot.
Yep. I most recently was working at a data science SaaS company up in the States, working with Fortune 500 companies to run, data analysis on data that we were collecting for them to help make predictions for them. So we used a lot of serverless to set up our processing pipeline and manage all our various integrations.
Right. Because the whole microservices movement, I'm not too sure if, well, I kind of equate it a little bit to distributed computing, even though distributed computing kind of has its very specific, computer science heavy background. But the idea is basically to break stuff up into smaller, maintainable pieces, right?
Yeah, certainly. To, really you have a service that really only has, one or two functions that are pretty discrete, and there's no need to have that in a bigger repo. So the ability to kind of deploy that independently is nice.
Right. Now, the only thing I love that style of computing because, Natty and I will collaborate on stuff, and she uses WordPress, and I understand WordPress's dominance in the market, but I actually can't stand these systems because it's so big, so monolithic, and so complex. But on the same hand, I did try years ago when I was just getting started. I tried to do everything in a kind of, well, I guess you'll call it microservice, but pull out user authentication, have a dedicated application for doing that. I think I was writing in Go actually, so I think that's also still up there somewhere on GitHub. Pull out things like just various functions of the application and break them down into little microservers and whatnot. And the thing I quickly realized was how daunting a task is when because it's just me by myself. I quickly realized that even though it has a lot of benefits, if you have to maintain those different microservices, you really kind of need the manpower because it's not easy to context switch from one server to one server when you have to debug stuff. I mean, you don't need a whole big team probably, but it I don't think people should underestimate the maintenance burden it can have. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's definitely some overhead. I think aside, there are two big things that I would count as drawbacks. One is like you're talking about having all of these separate services. Each one can wind up with its own code style. Some of them wind up in different languages. So trying to switch back and forth to debug things, especially when they're running in a pipeline or when their services relying on each other, it can definitely be hard to track down where things are happening. And establishing a more of an integration test approach can help, but it can also, again, add a lot of complexity. The other big drawback is that for things like consistent logging and consistent error handling, you're stuck essentially writing another service that you have to handle communication to, whether that's through a message bus or direct invocation or something. It's pretty hard to just include a module in each of your services that handles all that stuff the same, especially when they're written in different languages. So there's a lot of overhead. And I guess the third thing would be deployment. When you have a whole system of these things, trying to coordinate, all right, we've got a dozen different services that need to go up. This one relies on that one, so we've got to do them in an order. it can get a little bit hectic.
Okay, I just want to ask you one more thing, but before that, anyone has any questions on this that they want to bring up? Any comments? Okay, fine. Kubernetes, are you familiar with that?
A little bit.
Okay, enough to give us just a brief, for those who know absolutely nothing about it, what it is, what it's used for.
I mean, it's, as far as I'm aware, it's essentially a cluster management tool so that you can deploy a set of containers in a reliable, repeatable way, and it kind of manages some of the communication between those for you.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, tons of I mentioned that because I know I often see it in the dialogue about microservices and whatnot. I looked at it a couple of times, but it's one of those things that always seem a bit much for my use case, I would say.
Yeah, I would say it's really applicable when you have hundreds of containers that are being deployed as a fleet.
Yeah, same thing here. It's good for like if you have a data center and you need to deploy like thousands of containers at one point in time, but for like individual jobs, I don't think you'll see it on that kind of level.
Fair enough. Okay. Sorry, somebody had a comment there. Okay. Rolling along because we just hit the hour mark. That was the microservices for sanity and CRM. Sanity is so important in software development, and I think people underestimate the mental impact software development can have on you. But I'm a psychologist, so I won't have that discussion today.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would say on that topic is that having microservices, can allow you to forget about large parts of your application and really focus on building new features or, a certain subset that's critical.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the next session I was actually hoping would have been longer because this is another one of those things that I always have on my to-do list, but the real applications for me are not really where income comes from, but I do see it as very useful. Machine learning and computer vision. I see Anil's been here for a while unmuted, so I don't know if you just want to give us a brief as the session as to why we should probably look at it or whatnot.
Yeah, no problem. Well, the idea was to kind of give like an intro to machine learning for people who, interested in it and heard about it, but never really looked at it in depth or didn't really know how to start with it to get it integrated into like projects and that type of thing that they want to do. And it's basically two ways I looked at it. One was you could use APIs from existing cloud providers like Google and Amazon. They have a lot of machine learning stuff, and I concentrate on the computer vision aspect, which is being able to get information from images and video, contextual information. So if you have an image, what is in that image? If you have like an image of a person, information about that person, height, what they're wearing, where they are, that kind of thing. So you could use a lot of the APIs available from providers like Google, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, and they basically have a suite of computer vision services that they already built the stuff on their back end to do things like object recognition or facial recognition or like things like OCR and stuff like that. And you can basically integrate with those APIs. So you don't really have to know about it, but you could use the services that they have. If you want to get more in depth into it, you could look at the actual software libraries that you could build your own, say, image classification models and that type of thing. Things like TensorFlow and Keras and libraries like that that could get you easily started into doing something like an image classification model. And example show was like a very simple classification or image identification model that basically looks at an image and tells you whether the image is a doubles or not. And basically what it did was I trained a model using a data set which contained like I think it's 190 images of and a data set of general images that not doubles, and basically create a model. So when you pass image to that model, it will try to determine whether that image is a doubles or not. I mean, it's simple, but it kind of gives you an idea of how that type of image classification works in terms of being able to train a model with a data set of images. That's basically it.
Okay. I think the first thing in that session that stood out to me was how many pictures of doubles you actually have.
I basically I did not actually eat all.
But that said, from what you did, the idea or the impression I kind of got, okay, so I'm just gonna try something here, right? So as I looked at the a little bit of the source code, I also kind of like you putting up the not doubles, 70% doubles. I kind of got the idea in my head now that the way the computer vision probably works is like based on what you train it with, it keeps like an average of like, you know, pixel count and the color of each pixel and whatnot, and then kind of like brute force checks the image to see like if there's like a ratio of certain pixels occurred near to each other or something like that. So I basically kind of got an impression of a rough kind of brute force math that's really less about computer intelligence and more about just kind of like checking to see if certain ratios are similar. Is that in any way accurate or making any kind of sense?
Yeah, I mean, well, it is basically how you train the model. So the training of the model is actually that kind of brute force, kind of breaking down an image to determine a pattern of what the item is you want to train. And when you give it a number of those images, it kind of determines out of that a pattern of what these things should look like. And that is basically how I get the model. So yeah, the training stuff is actually I guess you could use the word brute force in terms of like extracting patterns. A lot of math stuff going on inside there, and to be honest, I not really I looking into it, but I'm not that into that in depth to the how yet. So the math stuff I can't really explain to you that much. So
cool. I can't really explain it either. But what so then one of the things I saw was they were talking about on one of those podcasts I watch, like the iPhone and newer versions, like I think the Google Pixel phone or something, coming with some kind of image recognition stuff or something. So you think that will be done using the remote servers, or they would actually like put the technology on the phone? Like, do you think the phones themselves could run this technology without having to be connected to the cloud?
Yeah, actually, that is one of the things they're doing right now. So a lot of newer phones, they integrate in special chipsets that do a lot of the AI and machine learning stuff. So Google, for example, has for their TensorFlow software, they have special chips, TPUs that are built to run those on embedded devices. So in the phones themselves, they will have uh, processors dedicated especially for that. And it like a lot, I think the Pixel phones and the newer iPhones, they have processors that optimized for that type of thing. So um, a lot of those things are being run locally on the hardware itself.
Okay, that's amazing. Any other questions for Anil or comments as well?
In terms of using this for, I guess, uh, was it augmented reality? Um, have you ever done a project which required this to, get into augmented reality, or build an augmented reality type feature using this?
Not with this. No, we haven't really looked at augmented reality using uh, these features. So it's not something I'm familiar with. I've been playing around with like AR Core for Google, but that's not really. That's a different application than from say machine learning and computer vision, and that I just trying to use those. The application I was building was an application to do like measurements on objects in a room. So there's not. I don't really deal with the machine learning aspect. There is mostly like accessing the API to get those things out of it. So
Okay. So you haven't been able to combine both as yet.
no,
But
no, I haven't. I found a project where I have had to do that yet. So I haven't done that.
okay, good.
Okay. Moving right along. After that session, we had the session on becoming a remote software developer. Now, this is like the soft skills block, I will call it. We had like 3 sessions that were not about hands-on code, but more about just you as a developer, your career development kind of stuff and whatnot. So Rohan is not here and Tremaine is not here, but the first one was on becoming a remote software developer, which was more interview style, where I sat down with Rohan, who's a software developer at, I think, Xbox was the name of the company. He has been doing this remote work thing for a while and has a group that is inactive, but he's going to be relaunching it as a forum and whatnot. But he's been helping people kind of get their act together with regards to remote work. As I mentioned in that session, I think, especially for younger people wanting to get into the field in the Caribbean, but not necessarily interested or able to travel abroad and work and whatnot, remote work is a relatively new path, but it's a path that's because the way I did it, and a lot of other people I know who not just develop any technology, feel as though if we can't find jobs that we enjoy, we go out and we for ourselves, i.e., become a consultant or a contractor or whatnot. But that can be a rough part, and not everybody is built for that. But the remote work thing allows, I think, the younger people to get the opportunity to actually work on interesting projects as well as get make some income from it. And I know quite a few people in our circles and communities have been actually dabbling in that. So I don't want to put anybody out here. Is Jared, you still here? Oh, he left. Okay. But yeah, it was a good session. The session was relatively active actually. So I can't answer much questions obviously because I'm not a remote developer myself, but I did learn a lot in that session. So if you're looking at additional sources of income or just want a new lifestyle in terms about remain a developer, I think you could check it out and reach out to Rohan. He could definitely educate you a lot about that. Okay, so I guess I'll just move on then to the next session, which was kind of related because a lot of the things Rohan talked about was basically how do you, make yourself more marketable and whatnot. In the other session with Tremaine Bushanan, it's not all about ones and zeros, the other skills required to be a good software developer. That was another good kind of source session too, where he talked about a lot of things we talked about, including me finding out that Jamaica had like 6 hackathons going on, probably at its peak or whatnot, which is interesting. I know we have hackathons in Trinidad, and I know you guys in UE circle, I think you all have your stuff, Telios does ID Code Jam and whatnot. But I like how Tremaine was talking about basically the hackathons serve like as a platform for the financial sector in Jamaica or whatnot, to kind of see the talent that exists, which I think is great. It's interesting that the financial sector paying attention to their local technology scene. I'm seeing we're going through somewhat of a banking revolution in Trinidad as well, but I'm not too sure how much local content actually. Good session. He talked about give us 5 pointers actually. Let me see if I still have them so I can repeat the 5 pointers. He's talking about having sorry. Okay, he talked about having domain knowledge, talk about being a member of your community, talk about not being afraid to try new things, taking ownership in your project, basically taking responsibility, and also being able to break down technical issues so that non-technical people can understand, which are all pointers I think we could all appreciate and are probably all familiar with. And it's good knowledge and advice to pass on to the younger generation trying to get in software development. And when I say the younger generation, I mean quite literally, the 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, 20, 21-year-olds looking at this field and thinking, should they try? Any points on it? Okay. So the session after that was with Ainsworth. Ainsworth Spence, learning your value as a team player, who's actually here, and I'm pretty sure he can give us a overview of the session. It was another soft skills type session, as I'm calling them. So we could take the mic, Ainsworth.
Sure, no problem. I think it's really important that with all the collaboration, all the ideas that people have in their heads, is that there are different roles everyone has, and everyone talks about wearing multiple hats as a provider, as your job. It's really important that people don't necessarily just default to someone because they're quote unquote senior. It is important that you listen to the seniors, but that position in quote unquote the role doesn't necessarily make the decision that they want to make happen always the best decision. Sometimes people will shy back because, well, I'm not the senior, so he says it is, so I should go with him just because he says it is. And part of what we have to realize is that in teams, when it comes to collaboration, working together, it's okay to say no. It's okay to disagree and say, well, I think we could do this better. I think there might be a different way we can approach it. And keeping in mind that even if you're in an office where it's 9 to 5 and you're coming in on a daily basis, you have to work with people that you will disagree with. And you have to find a way that you can use whatever talents and whatever God-given skills that you have to help navigate that. Sometimes it isn't just because you're the best coder. You do have to be able to explain that in to the value chain of those that make decisions, right? You can code fantastically, but if you don't have the ability to present that to the decision makers, whether they're in your organization or an organization that you're working in parallel with, you won't be able to win them over, right? And a good team player, as I'd mentioned in the session, if you look at what happened to Argentina had great players, but they weren't playing as a team. They had skills, but they weren't utilizing it to the best of their ability. Everyone knows that time is really our enemy, and as fast as you want to get something done, it also involves you being dispassionate about things that bother you about somebody else that might be on your team, or somebody that hurts you in the wrong way. You have to be able to use all of your skills, the personal skills, not just the technical skills, to be able to show your worth as a team member, because your value isn't just the fact that you can code really well, or you can see errors, or you can come up with insightful business ideas. The part of being a good team member is if there's a business call and you can't be on that business, or your business partner can't be on that business call, you've got to take up that mantle and be the business guy or businesswoman, and not shying back from that. One of the things that I mentioned in the session was continuous learning. That has to be, that's a mantra for everyone, because stuff changes all the time. There's new protocols, there's new software, there's new services that come out, and we want to try to implement those things. Look at yourself as the same thing too, and understanding your skills and your ability to get others on board and show empathy to other team members. They come in one day and they're looking down and they have a really bad day going on, but you still need to lift them up and bring them to being on your side with, hey, we got to get this done together as a team. So I mean, that's kind of the gist of it.
Right. I think well, this is out of course the Trinidad perspective, but I spoke to Natalie and other developers as well about this, because from time to time, I end up interacting with people who have dealt with other developers, and sometimes I'm surprised at how bad relationships turn between either client and developer, or employee and developer. I mean, I personally have no problems recognizing a relationship as turned sour, and I say, you know what, as a matter of just moving on, let's just come to an end here. But sometimes things really do get pretty nasty and pretty out of hand. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, software development can have psychological impacts. And sometimes I meet people and I think, it's probably not my place to say, you need to reevaluate some of your opinions on how you treat with some things, but it's easy feel to become very arrogant, I think. And we have to kind of look out for that, maintain a chill, and not just be that person nobody wants to interact with, because I'm sure we all have stories about that we can't talk about and whatnot. But there, in some organizations, people in software or IT and the whole get the reputation of being the person when other staff members see they literally don't want to be around because of that bad attitude and whatnot. Any other comments on this, actually?
Yeah, I would just echo a little bit of what he said. I mean, the soft skills are so critical. It doesn't matter how much code you know, but you could actually be a junior engineer in terms of coding, but wind up leading a team because of your teamwork skills that you never thought would be relevant in an engineering career. So it's really easy to underestimate those things as you're going through school and trying to break into the career field. But once you're there, those skills really pay dividends.
Yep, no doubt. Now, if anybody was going to say anything and I started talking, feel free to interrupt me because I'm just trying to not have the awkward pauses of silence. So, moving on from that session to our final session, Nicholas confused me quite a bit, but thanks to Google, I was able to look up some of this stuff. Progressive web apps, the next generation of web. So that we basically wrapped up the sessions with technical stuff after the dip into the soft skills section. This was pretty interesting, so I could let Nicholas talk about this again. Yeah. You there, Nicholas?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you sound good.
All right. Well, PWA is just basically ways of enhancing a website so it actually acts and behave more like a native app using the Service Worker API that is now supported across the popular browsers. So I just talked about what it takes to be a PWA, what features the Service Worker then allows your web app to have. And yeah, I did a little demo and talk about some case stories or case studies. Yep.
Right. I think actually, aside from the actual presentation itself, what I actually like, Nicholas, I forgot to mention to you, was the fact that you did it or whoever knew we did, but like the Pyman application you showed, right?
Yeah.
I think that was pretty cool because that was something simple and somewhat silly, but extremely useful. And I think because we talked with Rohan about, in order for some of the bigger jobs to come to the Caribbean in terms of software development, we have to actually be doing interesting things. And I think that's kind of like the first step towards that. Forced upon people so they could actually find it useful. I think that was really cool that you do that, and I'm guessing on campus you guys do probably experiment and do stuff like that a lot, right?
Yeah, for sure. Everybody finds their own thing. PWA is just something to be mine, and Pyman was basically my playground for me to test and experiment with the APIs. Hello? I'm not hearing Lozano.
Okay,
Okay, hello?
I think he has a issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I ran into a little issue there. Google Hello just popped up something and told me something, and then my audio switched. So, okay. Did you hear the question I asked, Nicholas?
Not sure. I don't think so. What did you ask?
Yeah, I was asking if I was talking about the Pyman application, right? And saying that it's a useful thing. And I think it's like those kind of things are like the first step towards like locally, regionally, whatever, doing more interesting stuff, just solving like common subtle issues people have with the technology and not doing it in a forceful way. So I was asking if on your campus, if you guys do a lot of stuff like that, where you would find something that's, you know, a little annoying and an issue common to different people on campus or whatnot, and just kind of throw up a solution for it.
Yes, for sure, for sure. We work on a bunch of different stuff. First, it started off for fun, but then actually it started to pick up a little momentum. So right now, with some of these students, there's actually a course that they do, which is an internship course where they do for credit, and they actually solve issues within the campus themselves. So there's some really interesting projects going on. But we still do one for kicks though. So another app that we're working on is called Menumizer. And oh, sorry, yeah, right. It's called Menumizer. It basically helps people, you know, buy KFC better, right? So sometimes,
Lord. But no.
Buy KFC better. Okay.
yeah,
That's not helping. Oh.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, we plan to expand to other restaurants, but the idea is, you know, sometimes you want to buy something and everything what you want is not in one combo. So basically, Menumizer is you just say, well, I want these specific set of sides and these kind of drinks, and it will advise you, all right, what combos to pick that is a guaranteed least price.
Did you just describe a crowdsourced fried chicken? Huh?
Well, we wanna do crowdsourcing to get the menus, but it's isn't crowdsourced at the moment. We handle everything. But yeah, basically that. But it's actually gone a little serious because people think it's an actual business, and it's just out of kicks right now.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So anybody has any questions on the actual progressive web app stuff as well? Because if you're doing mobile development right now, you never know, that might replace you completely.
What?
Yeah, go on.
Question that is it similar to like the instant apps? Google has an instant apps product.
Instant apps, I believe, I remember heard about instant apps, but I think no, because I think instant apps are still native, except it allows you to fragment them in a way such that a portion of them could be installed, so it's less installation waiting for the user. So, but I think instant apps are still native apps. We're talking about websites, things that are still on the internet, they are URLs, but when you go to them, then they can become an app on your phone.
Well, I think that, and I might need to do a little bit more research. I thought that that's what the instant app was. It kind of gave you the feel of an app, but it was all web based. That you could have, basically you could have a quote unquote application feel, but it was all URL and web based.
I'm not too sure, Ainsworth, but I think I know what you're talking about. I think it's a similar concept, but I think what you're talking about is the thing where Chrome browser itself could actually like bundle a web page into application, and it gives you like a desktop shortcut or something like that.
No, the look and feel is very similar to mobile, so that you wouldn't necessarily have to. So let's say you built your native app and you have the core pieces in AWS or wherever you decide to put them. Instead of building various versions of it, it would allow you to basically have a one-time use of that particular function of the app. So and probably not too dissimilar, but I didn't catch the session. I definitely want to check it out then. And especially I love the crowdsourced fried chicken. I think that's fantastic. The idea of being able to capture that look and feel for that mobile user and be able to make it similar to your application without you having to necessarily fully build out the full application, have to publish it, and then support all those pieces. Instances of you wanted to do KFC one time, but the next time you're doing 5-star Chinese restaurant the next time.
Yeah.
But I'd love to learn more, but it's very intriguing because I think it's a smart way to go about being faster, running faster with what you have, as opposed to waiting for everything to populate, doing the whole coding, and then putting it in the app store and then seeing how the feel is. You can do a lot of beta testing and see how the the crowd takes one version versus another, one aspect versus another, and not necessarily have to lose a lot of time or sleep with it.
Yeah, sure. And well, PWAs is really gaining popularity. A lot of businesses are looking into actually building some PWAs because again, websites are just are cheaper to develop for, right? And if you can get that advantages of being offline and being able to run it on mobile devices, I think it's a nice amalgamation of the advantages on both web and native.
Nice. Any more comments on that? Okay. So that was the last session. Well, other than this session, of course.
Before we move on, we're still talking about PWAs, right?
You have a question on the PWA?
No, not a question, just a comment, because like I had learned about PWAs earlier this year, which is why I found that session really informative. I'd learned of PWAs this year in Antigua at this hackathon that they were having for climate change resilience, and like the application of PWAs during like climate change disasters. It was really interesting to see how you could download an application that, like, it could be maps, it could be like maps is an example of a PWA, but like different examples of applications that work regardless of if there's internet or not, and how those scenarios played out to really affect lives in Antigua for this year was something interesting. So like that PWA session was really cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice. Great. So, like I said, that was the sessions we had. They were all pretty interesting, pretty amazing. People really kind of came out their shells and talked online on Google Hangouts. That being said, I didn't expect this part to go on so long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer Akua now the opportunity to talk about first his Hacker Hostel, and then we could probably get into the conversation about the other topics you wanted to. So we'll just kick off with that, since you were so good to sit down here patiently and whatnot. So Akua, if you would, Hacker Hostel and then the other topics you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks, Lasana, for inviting me to the Caribbean Developers Week. I want to talk about Hacker Hostel very briefly because I think there are more important things to discuss outside of that. But what Hacker Hostel is, quite succinctly, is a really complicated hiring exercise that Winston Wilkins and I came up with while I was literally searching for a job after I had come back from the US at Startup Jamaica. Winston at the time was the community manager for Startup Jamaica, and I had come to him asking for a job, and instead, he didn't have one to give, but what he did have was he had Startup Robot, which was not doing anything. He wasn't using it for anything at the time because his role at Startup Jamaica had basically, part of the deal was that he couldn't do anything startup related as he was involved at Startup Jamaica. So he gave me that. He gave me the resources and the connections he had built up in that company, and I took that and tried to sell Startup Robot. But I quickly products that Startup Robot had, and I pretty quickly found out. Well, yeah, I pretty quickly found out that basically we didn't have the capacity to deliver the services that we were trying to deliver, which was basically online business registration in the Caribbean, starting in Jamaica. And the reason we didn't have that capacity was because we didn't have engineers. So at our wits end, I had basically thrown up a website on Webflow Friday, I think. Last year, Friday last year in April, I'd thrown up a website on Webflow called hackerhostel.com. And the idea was I was just going to blast it that weekend to see if we could invite people from the United States, both students and senior engineers, seeing if we could entice them to come down to Jamaica to basically spend 4 weeks with us. In the weeks, they would be helping us to teach local students who had studied, who are in their final year of studying math, physics, or computer science, or electrical engineering. Helping us to basically teach these guys like basic front-end web development, and then we were hoping to take them through back-end development ourselves. What ended up happening was a disaster, to put it the least.
Always a great start.
Yeah?
No, I said always a great start.
Oh yeah, it was a disaster. But what we learned out of that was, yes, there were people who were willing. There were senior engineers out of companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, that were willing to come to the Caribbean and use their quote unquote volunteer hours here in the Caribbean and get kind of a work vacation. And two, that there were a group of students who were leaving college in the Caribbean, ill-equipped to basically move into a production environment to build software of any real consequence. So there didn't exist a framework at that point last year in which we could like take these guys out of college and basically help them transition into work, right? Like you can always, like what you'll find in a lot of these organizations across the Caribbean is a lot of legacy systems. So a lot of these boys and girls, when they go to these organizations, yeah, they'll get paid, but the opportunities to learn open source technologies is very limited. Outside of their free time, there really is no emphasis on, we need solutions. Do we have the resources to do it in-house? Okay, how can we invest in the people that we have in-house to go and learn these technologies and these methodologies to deliver better solutions instead of paying people like the World Bank or IDB or McKinsey and Company to fly down to the Caribbean and cost us millions of dollars per week and per month to deliver quite simple solutions. So that was what Hacker Hostel came out to be. Like, we just took students, we took people who were equally talented from the US and all over the world. We took them to the Caribbean, and we basically created jobs out of it at the end, because we were able to then hire some of these people who came out of the program. I mean, that is in a sense what Hacker Hostel is.
Okay, great. Now, so I don't know if you are able to talk, or are you willing to talk about like the business model kind of?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Nothing. We're pretty open with our business model because we're strong believers that we're going through the Caribbean anyway. But here's how we make money. The long and short of it. So we go to corporates and we go to governments, we go to corporates and we say, give us your young people, or where on the island can we find talent? If it's a small country like St. Lucia, for instance, where They go up to, I think, upper six, the 12th grade. But once they pass 12th grade, if they don't leave, that is the end of their education on the island. That's the St. Lucia.
Are you serious?
Yeah, in Antigua, they have it a little bit better. They have a bit, which is kind of like the APIIT, which is kind of like their coming to college, but for technical vocation, like a technical vocational school. But how we make money is like we'd go into a country and we'd say to a government or a corporate, we say to our government, hey, we are really interested in helping to create jobs in your country. We're looking for people. We're looking for people to hire, basically. And these are the skills that we need. We're a software engineering firm. We run this program called Hacker Hostel. It's a 4-week program. And we go through basically what we do. That government will say, hey, we can introduce you to people locally. Sometimes it's local business leaders that we reach out to first. They'll say, yeah, we can introduce you to people locally. Like in the case of Trinidad, we were able to meet a lot of the business communities, and we ask the members of the business community, hey, do you have any problems that you were going to put out for tender anyway? Like problems that they have in-house that they can't solve, they don't have the resources to solve it internally, human resources. So we basically ask them to sponsor us 15,000 US for us to have a crack at it. Because we're using inexperienced people, we pretty much need the 15K to just host people from the US and all over the world in that territory. And like literally that's what we use the 15K for. After that point, after Hacker Hostel is finished, which is why we don't during the program we put an emphasis on the fact that we give these guys real projects to work on, and these real projects have consequences. Because after the fact, these companies are usually interested in engaging us. If they're not interested in engaging us, they are already ready for us to write their next RFP, because at the end of it, we produce a project roadmap. We pretty much write an RFP for them, right? So they can choose to engage with us, create some jobs in the meantime, or they can take it to McKinsey, the World Bank, wherever they want to implement. They can do that if they have other local partners that they're willing to go with. But more often than not, they choose to go with us, as has been the case in Jamaica. And I mean, long and short of it, that's how we make cash.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm actually glad, because when I first heard of the Hacker Hostel from you, it's just like you said, you were trying to get the foreign students, whatnot, and then people started telling me that no, you were looking at university students as well in the region and whatnot, and I think that's really, really good, really positive. We'll see how all these things kind of all come together and drive the industry forward and improve our quality of life and whatnot. Because remember, kids, Caribbean Developers is for the children. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what's important for us is continuity. I keep speaking about the lack of talent in the Caribbean. It's a real problem to sustaining our startup ecosystem. As a matter of fact, I would argue.
But just now, let me just make one comment on that, because that statement was made a lot, the lack of talent. And I often counter and say there's a lot of talent, but it's unnurtured. So if we could just say the lack of unnurtured talent or something around that, because people like to say it have no developers in the Caribbean, but then what do I do and what do so many other people here do? So,
so to be clear, if I needed to fill a building, of engineers right now, in the Caribbean of, let's say, 200, and offer software engineering services out of Tamana, or out of St. Lucia, or out of Antigua or Kingston or Barbados. Realistically, could I do that?
200.
200 trained engineers, yes.
Yeah, they wouldn't be trained. They would be mostly you'll get
as you mentioned, underdeveloped. They are talented developer, but on the skill side, the training is lacking. And also, you want a group for 200. You can get 200 persons, but you'll have to train them and groom them with their talents. You know, they'll have the talent, but if nobody there to help them or guide them or motivate them, it's just
actually, I was gonna say that you'd have got probably like 50 hobbyists, 50 IT hustlers.
You'll get a mixture.
Yeah, you'll get a mixture. Not all would actually be interested in writing code.
But if they get the opportunity to be able to learn and to grow, there would be people coming out, and that's where the talent is. They are talented people. It's just that when I started off, I couldn't do anything in web development. I always had to seek going outside, looking for courses in Trinidad was very hard. But now you're seeing courses coming up. But before there was nothing. So if there's something that says, here, look, it's a place for you all to come and learn and to grow and to groom, they will come. As they say, build it and they will come.
Definitely, and that's the argument that I'm trying to make. I want the Caribbean to get to a place where we're able to and it's the same thing with animation as well, right? If we are banking on BPOs to be our savior, our governments, I don't think our governments have future-proofed, or even the businesses that work in the BPO sector are future-proofing well enough or fast enough. And I think that a big part of future-proofing the BPO sector in the Caribbean is moving up that value chain, training, figuring out where we can find the best talent, whether that is through immigration, as well, a combination of immigration as well as local training, or I think that those jobs in the BPO sector will not exist. But if we don't move up the value chain with engineering, I don't think we have very long to worry about whether or not the BPO sector is a real GDP earner in the Caribbean.
Well, actually, as you mentioned that I was in preparation for this week. I was all over the internet browsing, and ICT Pulse actually had an interview with a guy who's from India, but apparently he's based in Trinidad, but his company is like global or something like that. They do business process outsourcing. I'd recommend anybody interested in the subject matter check it out, because he was talking about that, like, basically, you know, as the technology gets more and more advanced, what you'll find is that the BPO opportunities are going to become are going to basically require a lot more skill and talent. So the issue you were saying was like the Caribbean nations kind of made their name, I think, in like call center stuff or something like that. But those kind of jobs will become less and less important then, and it will be more important for the countries to kind of like have a workforce that's more technically capable and has more skills and that kind of thing. So yeah, you're right. Basically, future proofing, you have to, but let's actually say you have to have those programs that invest in youth and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's around that discussion that I think I'd spoken to Shannon about this as well in the Caribbean App Developers Group. I had spoken to Shannon about a union for developers and engineers, and it has everything to do with ensuring that as we grow as an industry, as we grow as you know, real entities, that our interests are represented regionally in different governments, governments around the region, pushing the free movement of people, data, and goods in the region. I'm coalescing around the idea that we are one region, helping to push down the price of travel throughout the region, making movement of talent a lot easier, countries specializing in specific types of BPO. Like those things this isn't a pipe dream, because I think a couple of decades ago, the Caribbean Tourism Organization came to be as a result of that thinking, and you can see very much how the ministries of tourism around the Caribbean they've pretty much become a force in each country.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on, then let me ask you, what's your thoughts on the Caribbean single market economy and the CARICOM related efforts to get that free movement and whatnot?
So the CSME is heavily flawed, not because of the idea, but more of the implementation, which seems to have always been a problem in the Caribbean. The implementation, when I go to Trinidad or Barbados, there's always a question of why am I here? Not that question isn't valid, but the way that it's asked and the implications of getting that question wrong, quote unquote, at the border, means that I can be deported from either of those countries as a Caribbean national. That goes against the very idea of the Treaty of is it Chaguaramas?
Chaguaramas, yeah.
Right. I think I butchered it. Sorry. But yeah, it goes against the very idea of it. And if we're really serious, I think about having an innovation economy, the free movement of people has to be a thing.
Well, I think I personally in the past didn't pay much attention to it, because in Trinidad it's a lot different in Trinidad than the other islands. These things are not stuff that our institutions really care much to talk about. I've seen videos about the whole CSME movement online and whatnot, and the accents is always like I think Bajan, Antigua, and Jamaica and whatnot. Like in Trinidad and Tobago, if you don't go and seek out the CSME information, you are not going to see or hear about it anyway. But that being said, there was a guy actually I met who knows Shannon actually. He works at the, I think, CARICOM and whatnot, and he did a course that was basically about trade down here in Trinidad, and it was hosted by Export TT. What I got from talking to him is I realized is like, to me, there's not a lot of the wrong people are involved in pushing these policies and design these policies and moving things forward. It seems to me that now he's a young person who has a lot of vision and whatnot, but I guess like somebody like him could go so far. It seems to me that there's a lot of like disconnect between the people who set these policies and do these negotiations and whatnot. And when you really think about it, I don't think the outcome really affects them, because one of the things in the training session he explained to us was that if you wanted, like if I wanted to take my business to Barbados, I would have to go through the business registration process as though like basically it's a brand new company, and that's what Trinidad businesses will do. So like their branch in the other islands will be like a brand new company, rather than like we just kind of share information on companies and whatnot. And something like that is actually kind of that's actually a pain, because at my scale, if I wanted to operate in all the different Caribbean nations, or as many as possible, to have to learn the laws of company laws and whatnot to each one and actually set up on each one becomes very expensive. And if you are a bigger company, that cost might be negligible in terms of what you have to make. But for me now, I would have to look at my budget. I want to market my services across here. I have to do trips back and forth and whatnot. And these are the kind of things that if you want to have a in quote innovative economy, you have to be able to basically get that information up there. It doesn't have to be that you abandon the company registry in each island, but at the very least they have to be willing to share that information so that if I'm going to set up a branch across there, I can authorize my information from here, be available there, and they just go through the process on their end and I get a response. Best case scenario without actually having to go there. But
right. And speak, and like that is like literally one of many issues around and having a real innovation economy of scale. I mean, if you wanted, I mean, think about how crazy it is, right? Each of our islands at its largest, English speaking at the very least, at its largest, we have in Jamaica, I think 2.9 million people. Trinidad, I think, has about 1.5.
Like 2.9? No, I think Jamaica is not 200 and something million people.
No, man. Jamaica is 2.9 million people.
Okay.
With Kingston being about 1.12 at its peak million people during the week. But I digress. At least in each one of these Caribbean territories, you may have a population of, let's say, average 500,000 people trying to start a software business in an environment like that, where you're always going to be going against the grain, really. How effective do you really think it's going to be to have tech startups operate in environments where the population size is so small and distribution throughout the Caribbean is a real problem? Like, how do you sustain an innovation economy on that?
Yeah, because let me just add to that before I continue, because the Caribbean Tech Forum had a session with one of the NPM co-founders who is originally from Trinidad. And one of the things that upset me in that session, I mean, he was correct, but it's like, but the advice, when somebody asked what advice he would give to developers in Trinidad wanting to, make it big or whatever, and he was like, basically leave because the Caribbean is too small, and yeah. So I mean, him as an example, that might be the reason he actually left. But he has an example of what he has been able to achieve and accomplish on basically U.S. soil. And it's highly unlikely NPM could have been founded on, Caribbean soil, given the circumstances we have right now with all these issues.
And that's interesting, right? Because like, if you look at the population sizes of the countries that speak English, together, I think we're about 10 million people. English-speaking Caribbean, including Puerto Rico. We're about 10 million people. That's a market that you can build a business on. I think that's, and again, I'll say it. We need a union, a lobbying organization that represents our interests. Because if nobody makes the argument to CARICOM, if nobody makes the argument in Parliament in Trinidad and Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean nations, who will?
Right. So I didn't mean to politicize the conversation that much, but if anybody has anything to add to that or comment on that. I'm seeing we have a comment here. I'm not too sure who this is actually. Adrian Bush. Okay, I wasn't aware. He says the internet is an open battleground. Okay, again, set up. Yeah, so when you get set up, you can comment on that. What I would say is we need to take action on different levels if we really want things to be interesting. Like, I spent a lot of time in the past trying to get like developers interested in things other than software development, and it is hard. So you're right.
That's because developers are and understand that I come from a background of humanities, right? The most I can do in software development, which most people don't even consider it software development, is like build a web page. The reality is the guys who are going to fight for our interests are the guys who actually see where money can be made by unifying the Caribbean. It's the business guys, really.
Hello, you all here?
Yeah, Adrian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So my comment is what I was saying in response to the guy who co-founded NPM. I guess he has a point where if it wants your product to actually reach over the tipping point, because you know if it reach a certain threshold, the companies die. If you wanted to get that traction to reach over a certain point, it better to be in a bigger market rather than in trying to be good. But I see it as the internet is an open field in that the opportunity is there. It's just how we approach it and the strategies we use to get the company well recognized and but in a sense just to get the numbers to your company. You all understand what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I sorry, go ahead, Akua.
No, I do, Adrian, but I have to disagree with you. The internet is not an open battlefield. Here's the evidence for that. The startups that came out of Startup Jamaica alone, I think we went through 2 cohorts that I'm aware of, and I think about 30 startups. And of those 30 startups that came up out of Startup Jamaica, I think we now have 5, if that many, still operating today. We don't the lack of access to capital, lack of access to talent puts us at a severe disadvantage. You can build an application, yes, but without the proper mechanisms in place to support you as you grow, the reality is I can't make the argument that quote unquote the internet is open, man. It really isn't. It's not for us.
You might have to repeat that. We didn't get that too clearly.
Yeah, I would say he has a point there, but I guess from my perspective, I see it as you still have a chance, although you may have to use resources from well, you don't rely on your local resources if you know you don't have the backing in your country. I see it as you could still be in your country and use resources elsewhere to try and get ahead.
You see, the thing is, it's not like either of you are wrong, both of you are correct, but the issue, coming back to the whole CARICOM thing, is that like when he says like when I would say when I made the comment about the Caribbean being too small, as Akua mentioned, it's like what 10 million people in the English-speaking Caribbean at least or something like that. It is actually pretty sizable, but we have man-made actual barriers to actually reaching to that level because even like using, as you mentioned, Adrian, using resources from outside and whatnot, each time we have some kind of legislation that is like, okay, you know, like all the tax legislation that came by and whatnot, you know, that allowed like more scrutiny from outside, we have to ask like, what's in it for us? Because we always at risk at things like losing correspondent banking and rating agencies downgrading the nation and whatnot. But when we to the tune of these things and set things in place for them for basically bad things not to happen to us, why are we not trying to make sure at the same time that we leveraging whatever little thing we could use to make sure that it works both ways for us? Because we are in a situation trying to make now, for example, that well actually no, let me just say that because we now have TT Connect with the tax stuff and whatnot. But what I would say is I'm pretty sure accessing the US, being able to access tax records regionally, well locally, is easier than an individual being able to access their tax records. We have some progress in that regard, but I'm pretty sure it will be easier for the US to access your information than it might be for you to access your own information, put it like that. Historical information, at least.
All right, well, I'll be honest, I ain't too knowledgeable about trying to access that information. So,
Well, it's an example. It's not a bad one actually, but yeah.
I mean, here's where things get dangerous. You start talking about correspondent banking. You start talking about unifying the Caribbean as one single market economy. You start talking about the Caribbean using the euro versus the US dollar for trading. You get into some really market territory. I mean, the lowest hanging fruit right now for us, I think, is to look at how we can, at the very least, have people moving through the region freely as a basis to start having the conversation about how horrible our inter-Caribbean payment and financial system is.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, at the end of the day, it's related because what you have right now is like each island or territory kind of like pandering to the superpowers as an individual. And what that means is basically we kind of already divided and conquered. Now, Jamaica by itself can't make a statement like, okay, China stop dumping goods in Jamaica because they're not going to care. Jamaica would receive investment from China for various projects and whatnot. And to make those kind of statements, you're not in the balance of trade is not in a predicament where your remarks are going to carry much weight. But if it is you have like that freedom of movement and less barriers between the Caribbean, and the voice now is like, okay, the Caribbean region is concerned with what is going on with these kind of things. Then you get like these other nations might pay attention to more than we stop. The idea is to stop looking like we always begging for something, and more like as I think this song is a seat at the table or something like that. You know, basically to change our image because I sit down here and I kind of look at the news and I see like there was literally an article about Caribbean leaders begging the US not to mash us up with the factor laws and whatnot, like literally going to beg. And yeah, we want to do trade with the rest of the world and whatnot, but let's not sell our self short on our dignity as a people because then people are not going to feel the need to trade with us fairly in the first place.
Agreed. And again, a lot of our trade problems can be solved. A lot, not a little bit. And there are smarter people out there than I am who have a lot to say about this. But the currency or reserve currency as a Caribbean is the US dollar. The moment that we decide as a region that we're going to move from the US dollar to another stable currency, like the Canadian dollar, for instance, a lot of those banking regulations, a lot of those problems that we have as a region in terms of moving money, anti-money laundering, a lot of those laws, a lot of those words disappear overnight. And I don't think that we're just all treading water as nations. I don't think that we're looking at the long game, which is how do we become sustainable? How do we become a self-sustaining concern, really? But there doesn't seem to be any focus on that regionally.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm gonna now, because we are in injury time, I'm gonna now invite everyone and give everyone an opportunity to give some closing remarks. So just mention something that we didn't cover. I know we didn't discuss the themes and whatnot of Caribbean Developer Week, but guess what? All these things are actually encapsulated in the themes in any case, because we did talk about basically trying to not go bankrupt, which is in reverse, stuff like being a remote developer, making income. We didn't talk too much about keeping up on modern tools, but we did show off some new stuff like the PWAs and whatnot. The collaboration and finding good developers, we had a discussion on Hacker Hostile. Generally, collaboration was a common theme going throughout. Opika kind of saved us on quality control with the static code analysis stuff. Establishing a career was related to a lot of the things we talk about. So, like I said, the floor is now open for anyone to make any remarks, last remarks, or comments that they want to. Don't shove each other while you rush people.
Right.
Okay, well, I guess I will start if Tina's
Sure, no problem.
remarks. I think for me in particular, I think this is a great opportunity for developers to try and to get to know the community and understand what is out there, whether you be a new or a senior developer and have some years of experience. I think it's always a good idea to, you know, exchange information and just have a basic understanding of each other and of what we do in our respective communities. I'm hoping that next year we could do this again, or I don't know how you guys plan it, but I hope it comes around again, and I'm definitely willing to contribute again. So thank you.
Yeah, it's an annual event. We did get requests to do it twice a year, but it's a bit tiring. So thank you for
it's not a bit tiring, it's out of your comfort zone.
Get it? Naturally. So thanks for those words, Obika. I'm looking at my images, so I'll just point a finger at Nicholas. And do you have anything you'd like to close off with, sir?
I just think it's a really good idea for the to continue with the community spirit. Let's keep building. Let's keep talking and having these kind of events where we see each other faces. Hopefully we can have actual meetups too, so we see each other in person. But I just really think it's important that we know who's out there, who we can look up as role models and mentors, and who we can reach out to for like advice or know who's working in whatever space.
Wow, I didn't even look at it like that. Like, come to a Caribbean Developer Weekend, find a new mentor. That's a good point, Nicholas.
So,
okay, we'll skip right over Natty. I'll let you have your last remarks. Liz, anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, just thank you for putting this together. Thank you for everyone that came out. Just one thing on the topic of the difficulty of doing business across the region, and how there are 10+ million people in the English-speaking Caribbean, but to actually reach them can be difficult because of the laws, like you already mentioned. I think one of the big things that we can do through events like this is get to know people in those other territories that can help us understand what it takes to enter those markets or work in those markets. Things like this really help open those channels for collaboration, which is, of course, what's needed to really start to realize that CSME and that unified regional economy, so to speak. And it is really through things like this that we can start to lobby, start to show that there is a group of people who care enough to come forward and speak about those issues, to present to the people who have the power. Whether or not they're willing to listen is, of course, another question entirely. But the more that this stuff happens, the sooner the end vision will happen. And as far as getting that funding, like Akua mentioned, it's it can be really difficult to get outsiders to buy into things in the region because they don't understand it. They see the separation of everywhere, of all the different territories, and the few people who are trying to be in that space locally or within each country, they don't necessarily have the experience with the technology side of things to really offer the full range of support that you might get outside. So it's also on us as a group to try to provide that support to each other, and really try and make those connections where we can.
Excellent words. Akua?
This has been a really cool event, even though I've missed basically all of it except today. In closing, I want to say, so Hacker Hostel is looking to do you could call it an event if you want. You could call a forum. Yeah, we're looking to do a forum, if you will. And we would love for it, a physical one, and we'd love for it to be next year. We'd love for it to be Caribbean developers. We'd love for Caribbean Developer Week to be that branded forum. We're in talks with Amazon and other service providers like Google and Microsoft to be headline sponsors. We don't have a name for the thing yet. I think that there is an opportunity here to do that. I'm in Trinidad. I'm in Trinidad for the month of July. I should be there by Friday. So like I'm open to discussing this. And outside of that, there are regionally other little meetups that we can do to keep the spirit going. But like I think the Caribbean Developer Week summit or whatever we want to call it, in person is something that I would personally push to make happen, because I think this is a great community and we can grow this.
Okay, and we'll see how we can make that happen. We're supposed to have some meetups in Trinidad soon, so yeah, we definitely would have one in July, so you can look out for that. Ainsworth? Oh, sorry, nobody's hearing me speaking. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's mic is muted. Ainsworth, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
So you could just give us like your closing remarks or.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I apologize. I missed it. It jumped in and out, so I apologize. I think the idea that growth can come from other things besides those traditional industries that the Caribbean has, and it can come through technology and software, is vastly important. It has to be focused on. If you look at the amount of people that go through university or have a hospitality degree, hotels are great, tourism is great, those things are nice. Other industries are really good, but you can't build by just stripping the island of all its resources to try to sell to the rest of the world and expect that's going to be the thing that's going to move it into the future. And things like this, I was really fortunate to just come across, and I was a last minute jump on, but I'm really glad that I had a chance to meet you guys and hear, and I'm definitely going to go and spend some time and review all of your presentations, because I think this is the kind of thing that makes, gives inspiration and also helps drive some direction into the future.
Excellent. Okay, so Adrian, you actually were not previously seen yet. Could you, your closing remarks, and I guess you could also give your opinions of any of these sessions that you may have seen, and also, do you pronounce your last name? Is it Bush?
Well, my last name is pronounced Butch. I ain't too sure how correct it is, but it's supposed to be French.
Okay. Yeah, well, go on.
Right. Yeah. Well, I will just say I was mainly just listening to all these sessions. I believe I was present for most of them, and they were quite entertaining, and I learned a lot from them. Something like this, I always look forward to stuff like this where, basically bringing together like-minded people to do stuff, and we all learn from each other. A suggestion I will have, because I heard someone brought up the problem with students leaving schools and they don't have the skills apart from the team player mentality. They don't have the skills to produce world-ready apps, right? I was thinking if we, as the community, could have like events, that there are game jams. If you could have like code jams more than once a year, where people get the opportunity to, express themselves on something that may not be too heavy, that will take years, but just to put out something there and get some constructive criticism from the community. A lot of people, from my experience, a lot of people left school. They may have done well in school, but to produce something, the app's kind of weak, the software weak. It's not only if the design is weak, but the whole approach to it is not really at a finished level.
Okay. Interesting. Are you a software developer by chance, Adrian?
Yeah, I'm a software developer.
Okay. That's it. Very interesting. As people mentioned from time to time, there are stuff that's going on. The Caribbean Tech Forum used to kind of manage some. I think it was a spreadsheet they had that tried to like list all the events and everything going on in the Caribbean related to tech. So if I could find the link, I'll ask them for the link. If I could find a link, I'll probably share it so people could see. We might need something a little bit more scalable than that. But there are stuff because it's like I mentioned, Itelio's Code Jam and UE has a jam and stuff. But you see the issue traditionally has honestly been just as with the wider Caribbean. In Trinidad and Tobago specifically, the technology scene has been very isolated. Like I always mention how I would meet people from San Fernando, multiple people who don't know each other. I'll be like, "Yay, basically your neighbor doing the same thing you doing though," and you're not even talking to each other. So we kind of breaking that down a little bit and make it more aware. I think one place I'll say that I've been feeling is involving the younger generation because I'm getting older. Unfortunately, I have not been able to kind of connect with. The older I get, basically, the older people around me have been getting. I don't know if it's supposed to look like that or something. Yeah. So, but thanks a lot, Adrian, for your words and also hopping up on here.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Right. And thank everybody for taking part. Thank our speakers who took part in Caribbean. Oh, wait, sorry, Natalie, my apologies.
You could have gone. Okay. Well, I would like to thank all the speakers, all the people who participated in this week event. And I hope that next, I want to thank Ariel especially for being the other female along here. We are lacking some females, so hopefully within the coming months, we'll try to bring the females more to take part more in the events we are having. That will be my goal, to try and have a mixture of males and females and not just all be males. And again, thank you all for coming out, and also I hope that we all will be stay connected, continue communicating, as Ames would say, teamwork, collaboration, so just keep the lines of communication open, and hopefully we will be having more events and sessions, so we will keep everybody abreast of all that is going on. So thank you again.
All right, and just to repeat what she said, thank everybody for coming out and thank everybody for watching. I know right now Haiti Tech Summit is going on around the same time. I think it started yesterday. I don't know if they'll be live streaming everything, but I saw they started putting up some content, so I guess that could be checked out as well.
I think they were live on Facebook. But they were running live on Facebook.
Yeah, so I think that's the only other thing I'm aware of that's going on now, other than the Hacker Hostel coming up. But I think that's about it for now. But anyway, thank everybody for coming out. Join Caribbean Developers on Facebook if you're on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, I really don't know where to tell you to follow things because most of the activity, unfortunately, happens on Facebook. But there's also little pockets of communication on LinkedIn as well, and of course Twitter. So again, thanks a lot, and I guess I'll see everybody next year.